interesting goings-on at Chelsea at the moment. Their co-owner, Todd Boehly, has been talking about a bit of a rift in the ownership, but speaking to Bloomberg's business show, he said that this rift has been a bit overblown, but when he was talking to Bloomberg, he said that the long-term plans for the club could cause a split. Here's what he had to say.
We have a big stadium development opportunity that we have to flesh out, and I think that's going to be where we're either aligned or we ultimately decide to go different ways.
So a bit strange. So he says that there's not really a rift and it's all a bit overblown, and then says, oh no, but with regards to the stadium, it could cause a massive split. And so there is a rift going on, essentially, is what he's kind of confirmed there. How do you take that news on board as a Chelsea fan?
Yeah, I don't think it's that surprising. I think it's been one of the biggest secrets, open secrets in football, that Chelsea's owners no longer speak at one point. They certainly don't get on. They're certainly not singing off the same hymn sheet. And ultimately, they don't really want the same thing for the club. I think the process that both of them want to impart into Chelsea are different. They both see the running of the football club in a very different way, through a different lens, and ultimately neither vision is compatible with the other one. So no, it's a problem, and it's going to clearly come to a head, and there will only be one victor. And I mean, this is now an awful situation because I don't like either of them.
I was going to say, who would you rather win?
None of them.
But neither.
No, I'd rather they sell altogether, but I don't know. There's a lot of almost like legal pollution in this. I don't know the specifics of it, but I don't think... I remember when they bought it on... Look, I'm a top line. I don't get the legal ramifications of this whole thing, but when they bought the club, I remember one of the things that the government actually put into place was that they couldn't just flip it. They didn't want a situation where they could allow somebody to buy the club, flip it for a profit. So there was a minimum of 10 years that you had to own the club for. I don't know if there are loopholes around that. So I've got a bad feeling that we're going to be lumbered with one or the other.
Yeah, I think you're probably bang on there. It's interesting. So in very basic terms, because as you said, there's all sorts of kind of legalese around all of this, but essentially, Todd Boehly wants to move a stadium to Earls Court, and Ed Barley maybe wants to try and expand at Stamford Bridge. But this was Henry Winter, the award-winning football journalist, speaking on how football works on the talkSPORT YouTube channel about this stadium drama. Here's what Henry had to say on this rift.
Whenever you write about Chelsea moving to Earls Court, you get Earls Court businesses and saying it's impossible, we're already embedded in here, so prepare for a fight. I think expanding Stamford Bridge is just... it's almost impossible because of you obviously got the cemetery, you've got two major roads, you've got the railway line. I don't quite see how they do that. You've also got quite wealthy local people who have access to lawyers who don't want skips outside their house for 3 years. So I really think it's incredibly difficult. I mean, when Todd Boehly did one of his rare sort of public appearances down at Cobham, that was the only question I asked him. I said, you realise transforming your squad is one thing, but actually the stadium is going to be your biggest thing. And there are issues, like you cannot raise a certain amount part of Stamford Bridge because it dates back 300-400 years. That there's a point in Richmond Park which allows you to stand on a point in Richmond Park and look towards St Paul's Cathedral, and nothing can come in the way. But if you then raise whatever it is, the West Stand, the East Stand, whether it's the Shed or Matthew Harding Upper, you can't historically, legally do that. So there are all sorts of issues.
Yeah, Henry Winter speaking there on how football works on the talkSPORT YouTube channel. You've seen it, by the way.
It's excellent show.
Host good, isn't he?
This is one flaw in the show, I would say, as a host. But apart from that, I think the content is excellent.
Okay, brilliant.
And the guests are superb.
Well, it's so interesting that, isn't it, from Henry? Because he's basically pointing out that they may be in this big rift. They may be not speaking. There may be, all sorts of arguments going on. But he's saying that either plan isn't going to work. You can't expand Stamford Bridge, and you're not going to get your wish of moving a big stadium to Earls Court because of the local businesses, because of how difficult it would be to make. And the interesting thing, Rory, is Henry didn't even mention, of course, the pitch ownership too. So it just seems, is this a big fight over nothing, essentially?
Well, I actually disagree with Henry. Look, I totally appreciate that he has a great understanding of this situation, but I actually believe that you can redevelop Stamford Bridge. I think that it's a convenient thing to suggest that you can't. But let's remember, Roman Abramovich was going to do that. He had the plans. They were ready. Chelsea were redeveloping Stamford Bridge under Roman Abramovich. So it was going to happen. The plans were all agreed, and it didn't happen because of obvious permutations that existed in society. Like, it wasn't to do with the plans not being acceptable. The plans were acceptable. And this is another thing that I think people go wild about. You can redevelop Stamford Bridge. Okay, Henry has mentioned there in that piece that because of a rather old and draconian law that you need to have an eye line to St Paul's Cathedral from Richmond Park, you can't build to a certain height. That's fine at Chelsea. You don't need to, because we don't have the fans that everybody seems to think that you need. We don't need an 80,000 capacity stadium. We don't have 80,000 fans on a weekly basis. We may well fill it, but we will fill it with tourists.
What could you expand to? It's 42,000 right now, isn't it?
I think we could easily go to 60, 65. You could possibly push. Anything above that would be tricky. I think Chelsea would be very happy in a 60,000 capacity ground. 60,000, which would be another 20,000 fans. There is absolutely no way in this world that you cannot accommodate 20,000 fans when you look at Stamford Bridge. I know Stamford Bridge like the back of my hand. The shed end, which backs onto a hotel, okay, you might need to do some work there. Knock the hotel down for all I care. Build the shed right back. Think about how far back...
Well, they'll have sold that hotel to themselves anyway, won't they?
Think about how far back the old shed went. Like, you know, the old shed when it was a terrace and people often mock, you had cars parked around the outside and whatever else. Think how far back that went. That's how far back it could go. Just ignore the Chelsea Village. The lower tier of the shed end, about 20 rows in it. 20 rows. Like, just mirror the north stand with the south stand, and all of a sudden things look very different. So I believe that Stamford Bridge can be redeveloped. I believe that we can accommodate ourselves perfectly at Stamford Bridge. Earls Court has been mentioned. I just don't think it's practical. I think it's been mentioned for years, since I was a kid, Earls Court. Yeah. And it's not practical.
And it's leaving home as
well.
And
anything beyond that, like, I'm not up for leaving it anywhere. I believe Chelsea play at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea exists because of Stamford Bridge. Chelsea are intrinsically linked forever to Stamford Bridge. Peter Osgood's ashes are buried under the shed end penalty spot at Stamford Bridge. I will vote no. CPO say no. We did it in 2013. We fought Roman Abramovich. I would do exactly the same thing again.
Yeah.
People are a little bit softer than me. They would say Earls Court is okay. But anything else, like, when they've spoken to us about the scrubs and that, like, up by the Linford Christie, what's Wormwood Scrubs prison. They've spoken about that in the past. They've spoken about crossing the river to Battersea. Yeah. Chelsea aren't the south of the river club. We're not crossing the river to Battersea. We're not going to Wormwood Scrubs. It's QPR territory. And anything beyond that, I've heard Todd Boehly speaking, and this is so American. He starts talking about, like, basketball matches there and things like that. And you're like, mate, that's got nothing to do with that. I don't care about basketball. I don't care about basketball matches at Stamford Bridge. There's no place for basketball when you're talking about Chelsea Football Club. When you're talking about the home of Chelsea, I'm not interested in American football. I don't care. Talk to someone else about that. Talk to Daniel Levy about it. He loves it. Chelsea needs to be for the football team. Priority the football team. Not Beyonce, not American football, the football team. Yeah. And I think that we can do that at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, so surely if this rift exists then and will cause a split like Boehly's suggesting there to Bloomberg, you would, I know you don't want either of them, but you would want Boehly to lose, surely, because he's the one that wants to push that Earls Court idea.
Yeah, I would want, you make your enemy's enemy as your friend and all that. But the problem is Barley's approach to the football team is really bad. So it's all very well redeveloping Stamford Bridge, but Barley's approach to football is wild.
Yeah, well, on that, can we talk about Jadon Sancho as well? Because we've heard some news this week that firstly they are still expected to sign Sancho permanently, but that if they decide to end this loan deal, they'd have to pay Manchester United a £5 million penalty because they loaned him with an obligation to buy. I mean, that is an absolute mess, given the way that Sancho's form has dropped off. Would you urge the club to just pay the $5 million and get it gone?
It's best.
It's almost like they're going to sign him out of embarrassment.
Mate, it would be the best £5 million that Chelsea would have spent since we signed Paul Furlong from Watford. Like, that's how big the $5 million would be. It would be the best £5 million that we could possibly spend this summer. If we only had £5 million to spend, I would spend it on giving that money to Manchester United to avoid the eventuality of Jadon Sancho ever wearing a Chelsea shirt again. It's a complete disaster. He is a complete disaster. He doesn't care. He's had one shot on target since Christmas. Since Boxing Day, one shot on target. He's meant to be our sort of inside forward, you know what I mean? Cutting, unpredictable, mercurial player.
Did you not see anything
useless
before that, though? Before, the drop off? Because the whole team's dropped off.
So what, though?
Palmer's dropped off.
You see glimpses here and there. Nobody's ever denied that. When he played for Manchester United, he scored a goal at Stamford Bridge for them. When he played for Manchester United, didn't he score a winner against Liverpool? We've seen glimpses of it. But he's so average. He's so average. He's so inconsistent. There's been so many issues with his application. And not just at Chelsea. In fact, at Man City, they weren't happy with him missing training. Dortmund, fined for being late. Manchester United, fined for missing team coaches. Declaring war on the Manchester United manager. He's a problem.
I wonder how Manchester United might look at it, though, as well, because obviously, we all know
they think of it as a free £5 million quid. Free £5 million quid, though, won't they?
Yeah, of course they will.
They'll think of it as a free £5 million quid and try and flip him again.
Yeah.
But they won't want him to play for them. Also, he doesn't deserve to play for them. I wasn't a particular advocate of Erik ten Hag, but whatever you think of ten Hag as an individual, the office of Manchester United manager needs to be respected to the utmost. And do you remember what he did? I think people forget. Erik ten Hag was quite good to Sancho. He pinned it to the top of his social media profile. Do you remember that statement?
Yeah, I do remember that.
It's appalling. It's appalling. You can't have players like that in your camp because it will destabilise massively.
Well, that will mean, by the way, though, that if he does sign for Chelsea, as we are expecting, that we're hearing, that will be Sancho and Sterling on Chelsea's books next season.
Are you not hearing that Chelsea will spend £5 million and send him back to Manchester?
No, hearing that he's going to be bought by Chelsea
and sold.
Well,
surely, he can't play for us, Ollie. He's just not a Chelsea player. He's not good enough to play for us. He's not consistent enough. He's not penetrating enough. And being totally honest, I don't think he really wants to be there. When you look at his body language and you look at him playing for Chelsea, he's not busting a gut. Him, Christopher and Nkunku, it all looks very laid back,
have you reached a stage, do you think, as a club, they've signed so many players, there's so much competition that there's actually no competition. There's no competition.
Yeah. There's actually
I feel like it's reached that kind of kind of stage.
And do you know what they've done? They've massively normalised mediocrity. They've massively normalised it.
Is this your email that you've brought up?
Did you see that?
You? Yeah.
Yeah. When I got an email from the club basically suggesting that we should celebrate competing and losing 1-0 to Arsenal. Didn't we compete well at Arsenal? Got beat.
It's the kind of email that or headline you'd see on the Newcastle website in the Mike Ashley era. When they'd gone to Man City and lost 5-0.
It
genuinely was.
They find a positive and they try and pretend to you.
I know it's
gaslighting you, isn't it? It's gaslighting you. It's like, wait, I know this isn't okay. We've just lost to Arsenal. That's never acceptable. And you're telling me it's okay. And now I'm thinking, am I going mad? Am I the problem here? Because I know that's not all right.
Do you reckon you've got some intern sacked for that? I reckon you might have,
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.